Hello and welcome to the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron, and two special guests today from the OTG Podcast Network, Just Ball Things, Jack Manuell and Nick Buissink. What's up, guys?
Howdy. Yeah.
We are one Nick short of being like a Nick party. We need like Nicolas Cage in this thing right now.
Nicolas Cage would make everything better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love your guys' podcast so much that when I got a new car, my license plate actually says JBT.
Are you kidding me?
It's a real thing. That's a real thing. I mean,
like
actually, I'm not going to lie. It wasn't planned on my part. He kind of just gave me the license plate, and I was like, JBT? Like, there's no way.
We haven't copyrighted it yet, so unfortunately you are allowed to still have it, Kory, but we will be patent pending.
The DMV wants you to be a lifetime fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what we are talking about today will be the Washington Wizards. Before we get started, though, as always, you can check out us on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube. You can also check out JBT at the same spots. But before we talk about the Wizards for next season, we're going to look back at last year. 43-39, 8th seed, lost in 6 to the Raptors in the first round. John Wall was banged up, only played 41 games, was back by playoff time. But what were your thoughts on last year for the Wizards?
Safe to say, I think it was a bit of a rough season with the changes that were forced upon the team.
Yeah.
No, I'm a bit of a Wizards fan, and if you think the Wizards did well last season, you're delusional. John Wall's injury forced Beal to take almost full-time point. And, improvements definitely need to be made. Our attitude was a big talking point, and for sure. And an 8th seed finish and a first-round exit, having been blown away in those first 2 playoff games, personally for me, just isn't good enough. So what I make of last season is it wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a roller coaster, but without like the fun of the roller coaster going down.
It was just constantly up.
It was just an up. You just like you're always tense going up the roller coaster. Yeah. It never went down. You never got the adrenaline rush or the serotonin and stuff. But yeah, it was definitely one of those up and down seasons. Nick at least has had some sort of success being a Wizards fan, but I don't know. He seems to bring him down a little bit, and he's a bit of a sadist. But yeah, I think Bradley Beal was a nice spot, but it was up and down. Scott Brooks' coaching. I mean, I don't know when the Wizards have had a really good coach. Yeah. Randy Whitman.
Don't you diss Randy Whitman?
Bring back Randy Whitman. But yeah, I think it was up and down to say the least. It was a bit of a bipolar season from the Wizards, as it tends to have been for probably maybe the past sort of half decade or so.
Yeah, I think definitely Bradley Beal was the highlight. I mean, Otto Porter Jr. has definitely shown some nice strides. I think he's a nice number 3 option. He probably would be better if he had a bigger role within the offense. It just sucks anytime you're a star and John Wall, he misses a ton of time with the injury. And then, I mean, all the mini beef between him and Gortat and all the teammate stuff. I mean, that was such a weird, like, undertone to last season. Yeah. I mean, when they're healthy, I mean, this is one of the top 5 teams in the East easily when John Wall and Bradley Beal are both healthy. It's just the chemistry in the locker room. It seems to be what kind of holds this team back from taking the next step. And, of course, this team was talking so much trash to start off the year. Like before the Lakers game in particular, like, well, we're going to shut him down and everything else to Lonzo, and that really didn't go according to plan.
The funeral game.
We lost that game as well. We lost
which was embarrassing. That was a really bad loss. That's like one of those games where I was like, all right, if the Wizards like back this up, then like respect. And then like they just didn't. And I was like, ooh, this is not a good sign.
Yeah.
Talking about that, what Kory mentioned, the chemistry last year in the locker room, how much do you think that impacted the Wizards, last season?
Majorly. I mean, it was an underlying factor throughout that whole thing. The little what's the word? Passive aggressive tweets from Marcin Gortat, just about the team play. You could see it on the court when you have a sense of unhappiness.
Yeah,
there's a sense of arrogance in that team, and then that drives you right down. Because I also, in my many sporting areas, also follow Manchester City, and old Manchester City were very arrogant when we had Tevez, and I might be spitting names that is. You guys don't understand at all.
Speak that knowledge.
But the arrogance in the team is very similar to what's happening in the Wizards, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with basketball, you need to have that team cohesion, that team chemistry. I think it's the best teams of all time, like the Boston Celtics of old. Even Kobe and Shaq got along when it mattered. But this Wizards team, whether it's John Wall, whether it's Bradley Beal, whether it's a combination, but I think everyone knows the photo that was making the rounds late season of John Wall and Marcin Gortat arguing with Bradley Beal a towel over his head. I mean, if we were doing a video podcast, that would be like the background image for this thing.
Picture says
1,000 words.
Yeah,
yes, it does, Nick. But yeah, it was certainly more down spots than up spots, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much exactly what Jack and Nick said. I mean, I think it definitely had. I think Gortat leaving isn't just. Obviously, he can't even make a layup at this point in his career. I know that me and Nick made. We were really hard on Gortat last year on the NBA Outlet. Like, he was one of the players I think we picked on a lot. He just wasn't good. And then, of course, when you start like calling out your teammates and more and more, John Wall than anybody else. It definitely makes for locker room issues, and the locker room is already, as we mentioned, it's been kind of turbulent already. I mean, it hasn't been smooth sailing for that locker room, in particular between John Wall and Bradley Beal. And they made a great addition to try and fix that, right?
Yeah, they remind me of a Clippers East. Sorry, Nick. They really remind me of a Clippers East. And JJ Redick came out recently, and there's always been these little tidbits of like the passive aggressiveness and like not buying in. Like the amount of talent that this Wizards team has. I've always been super high on them, and I did an article for the Hot Take Marathon, and it was a huge hot take saying that they could finish with the 3rd seed. But that's because I fully believe in a healthy John Wall and Bradley Beal. But obviously with all the personality issues, I mean, we're going to be talking about this for the rest of the season, and there could be the number one storyline in the Eastern Conference, especially with LeBron James now gone.
It starts from the top down, though. I mean, our Wizards fans have been calling for Ernie Grunfeld's head for a long time.
Yeah.
There is a lot of Wizards fan pages that are just like booed out Ernie, and it's like not to blame, Scott Brooks and the team and whatnot, because it starts from the talks, cut the head off the snake at the top.
Yeah,
I'm bad at
these, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Phrases.
We are good with the analogies, but I can understand it because I'm very close.
We
to
speak a unique language.
We do. It's the accents, guys. It's not what we're saying. It's the accents.
But yeah,
it makes sense. I know what you're saying. But all of those are fair points, and the Wizards will be one to watch going into 2018-19.
And like Jack was saying, talent-wise, they're such a great team, but it's just the chemistry and everything gelling, I think, is what the major concern is. Because similar to what Jack said, I've been pretty high on them in the past, and they just constantly let me down. But talking on a more of a positive
note,
note,
you're telling me.
It's a Knicks thing, I guess. Highlight of last season.
Highlight of last season, I think we touched on it before. I think Kory touched on it before. Beal's rise, I guess, and whether it was natural or forced upon him, doesn't matter. He got the All-Star nod, so I'm stoked about that. With Wall missing half the season with that pesky knee, he played all 82 for the first time in his career, so that was fantastic. He got career high in assists and rebounds as well, which just highlights that elevated role. He made that All-Star in the first ballot, which was, impressive considering the amount of injury replacements.
Yeah, that's true.
He wasn't just pinned in as an injury replacement that got in. But yeah, I mean, he was easily the highlight for me.
Yeah, definitely 30 points or more 15 times throughout the season, and then that 51 insane performance against the Blazers in December.
Mm-hmm.
The most points ever scored by anyone playing on the Blazers on the road. And if the previous record holder for that was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, so decent company for Beal to be in. And yeah, I think the 82 games was a real highlight because Beal's been really questioned for his health, and obviously you can't help injuries some of the time, but I think the durability has been a real question mark over him in terms of taking that next step, and he's sort of erased that now, and whether he can do that going into next season as well obviously is going to be a question. But he was awesome. He finished 4th among all NBA players in total minutes played, so durability was certainly a huge factor for him going into the season. And a little minor shout out to Thomas Satoransky. I thought he was really awesome. And I think Scott Brooks probably underutilized him, especially in the playoffs as well. But I think that he was really, really good as a backup point guard. And I hope that he can get used a little bit more going into next season.
Just touching on the 82 games, that's got to be a huge confidence booster for him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He has faith in himself now.
Exactly. Yeah. Good going into next season.
Yep.
I'm a big Bradley Beal fan. I'm a big Florida Gators fan, so I got to watch him in that 1 year in college where he lit it up. Bradley Beal was tremendous last season. Obviously, playing all 82 games you guys mentioned, being the guy when John Wall went down. I know you will probably know this better than me, Nick. I mean, that stretch where Wall was gone and this Wizards team started winning games without Wall, and they were kind of on that hot streak where even like NBA Twitter was like, damn, like the Wizards are better without John Wall. And it was like, all right, like you're all morons, first off.
Slow down here. Exactly.
Let's take a step back and realize that there's an all-star, borderline superstar not on the court right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, that stretch right there, shows what kind of player Bradley Beal is, because when he's forced to be the number one option and you make, Otto Porter Jr. the second option, that this team can still be successful. And then when John Wall can come back and this team, can get stuff back on track, this could be a really dangerous team. Like, they have all the confidence and all that when they're actually playing. They just got to be healthy, and they, obviously they have to like each other when they're on the floor.
Yeah, that's really important.
That's key.
Like you guys said, Bradley Beal obviously is the highlight, but like Jack mentioned, I usually go with the low-key guys. Thomas Henoransky, I thought was really impressive, going from pretty much a nobody to getting a lot of hype when Wall was out. And like Jack also said, Brooks probably didn't use him enough in the playoffs, and I thought he was really impressive, and there's plenty of room for improvement. Or if they don't want to use him, I think he'd be a nice trade asset. But going back to the Wall and Beal talk, there's a lot of talk last year. If you could take one of them, who would it be, Bradley Beal or John Wall moving forward?
Nick?
This has been a question.
It's like choosing between like your future children.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sticking with Wall. It's just he has proved himself a lot more than Beal at the moment. Jeez, that is a tough question, but I'm gonna have to stick with Johnny.
But in terms of personality fit, it seems like Brad Beal is almost
he's more placid.
Yeah, I mean, and I get that. I think you're getting a higher ceiling with the John Wall, but probably obviously with his injury issues, it's odd. Like, their roles have almost reversed in terms of the injuries. Like, and obviously now is when you sort of want to be getting healthier. But obviously that contract as well with John Wall, the Supermax kicking, and not even next season, the season after. I'd personally take probably John Wall as well, just because his upside is tremendous. I remember the days where it was John Wall or Kyrie Irving. That was a legitimate conversation. Obviously, Kyrie Irving has usurped him and then some. But I think the fact that was a thing, John Wall in the playoffs a couple of seasons ago against the Celtics, I think
dagger.
That dagger, yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, he's got all the swagger when it's used to the personality is obviously an issue. But I think his game, combine all those sort of issues, I think he is still the number one guy. I think it's just going to be health concerns that are going to linger going into next season and beyond.
What about you, Kory? Beal or Wall?
I'm sorry. I was actually trying to think. Like, this is a really hard question.
It
is a tremendously hard question.
We're gonna put this on Twitter, Nick. After put on the OTG Twitter, I reckon it'll be interesting to see the results.
It's got to be.
What do you want, Jack? Sorry to cut you off, Kory. Poll or regular tweet?
We'll do poll, because then we can have the numbers to prove it, and then we can add John Wall if it ends up in Bradley Beal. And he will retweet us, and we will get millions of followers and stuff. But yeah,
we'll just start another rift between in the locker room. That's all. We'll just
via OTG.
Yeah, true that. Yeah. True that.
We're the reason that Bradley Beal demands a trade in a couple of months. I'm leaning towards John Wall still. I just think because of the overall impact he can have on the floor, being the point guard and the guy who's got the ball in his hand majority of the time, the facilitator. If his jump shot can stay consistent, he can elevate the 3-point shot. I mean, I think it's got to be John Wall, but I mean, it's just so tough because Bradley Beal, he's got those Ray Allen comparisons because he's such a great knockdown shooter,
so smooth when he plays, and
he's actually a really underrated playmaker. Bradley Beal can actually get other guys involved. I mean, not to the same level that John Wall can, but I'm going to go with John Wall. I'm going to go John Wall.
Yeah, I think with the Ray Allen thing, the only thing that Ray did way better at his peak was get to the line. Like, he was ferocious at getting to the line, and his dunking ability was insane. I think Beal still has a ways to go in that, but I think it's one of the sort of few weaknesses in his game right now.
Yeah, and I think one thing that makes this a little bit closer is obviously John Wall's injury last year, and then you're a little bit concerned about the knee moving forward. But flipping the switch to a negative side, biggest disappointment of last season?
Biggest disappointment was sort of quite a few to choose from, I guess.
How long you got?
Yeah. And they more or less all stem from the arrogance, the attitude problems, and the disharmony in the locker room. I mean, we've all touched on this before, but we were doomed to failure in those playoffs when Wall's comments regarding the tanking of the Cavs because they were scared to face the Wizards. That was just, why? Why?
Yeah.
And then that put a curse on us, and it was almost like a fait accompli that we would go and have a 6 of 8 March and a 1 and 5 April.
Yeah.
We lost 5 of the last 6 games of 6 of the last 8 games we were 6th, so we were 4th.
Yeah.
And we finished
8th.
So
it's a horrible finish, and John Wall was back at that stage as well. I mean, you have to say the locker room issues in terms of, and on court, it was reflected. Like Nick mentioned, 6 of the last 8 games, you finish in that 4th seed. You get home court advantage rather than versing the Raptors. Yes, they did challenge them, and they could have easily beaten them. But a 4th seed is much more comfortable and a much easier a ride to the second round than sliding down to that 8th seed. But
I don't put a lot of stock into those playoffs wins. We put it to 6 games, but we got trashed in those first 2 games in Toronto.
Yeah.
And it was embarrassing. Like as a Wizards fan, you stick by your team, like any team. You stick by your team. Comments they make, it's like, oh yeah, maybe they did tank. Maybe they did. Maybe we are the best team in the NBA.
Yeah.
And we go and lose to the Raptors in the first round, get smoked in those first 2 games. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, there have been many comments made by teammates, whether it's Jan Mahimi, Bradley Beal, any guy. But for me, the ones that ring true, and this is by USA Today, and John Wall said this, and he was sort of saying he puts the pressure on himself, but then he finished with, if I'm doing my part, the other 14 guys on my team have to do their part at getting better every year, just being true to the team. I think our problem we have a lot of times is guys that understand their role and respect their role. That is like damning coming from the leader of your team. Now, if that's LeBron James saying it, like he's got the sort of gravitas behind him that he can say it and people will ride behind him because he's got the sort of, he gets the buy-in first. I don't think John Wall puts the arm around the shoulder enough as a leader of the team. And obviously the yin and yang sort of personalities of Wall and Beal. But we've seen it work with Simmons and Embiid to an extent. Like they're both sort of very differing personalities. And you make it work because it's what's best for the team and it's what's best for your organization. And it's ultimately what's best for you. If you're winning, you're going to get that money. You're going to get those kudos. You're going to get the All-Stars, the All-NBAs. So those comments for me were just emblematic of what was a pretty horrible season for a team with so much talent.
I really want to nitpick the comparison of Ben Simmons and Embiid to Wall and Beal. Only because I don't think Ben Simmons has a mentality of he wants to be the number 1 scoring option on a team, which is why they work, because they know Embiid is the number 1 scoring option. Whereas for the Wizards, John Wall feels like he is the number 1 scoring option, when it's probably Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
So I just wanted a little nitpick. Don't leave the podcast. Don't leave. Don't kill me.
No, I completely hear what you're saying, but I think that it's more the number 1 guy mentality. I think Simmons and Embiid work well together because Simmons wants to pass first. He doesn't want to score. He's not a scorer. He's a Rajon Rondo type in terms of the fact he'd rather get those assists on the board, those 20 assists rather than a 20-point 10 assist game. And I think, like you said, Kory, I agree with you because that mesh as well, because Joel Embiid can get those buckets down low if he gets fed, in terms of being a post passer. Ben Simmons is really good, but I still think that there's a lot of work with those two for them to fully reach their potential because there's still, issues going forward. But we're on a Wizards podcast. We'll do a Sixers podcast at some stage in the future.
Yeah. But my disappointment it's got to be the John Wall injury. Just not having him there. What did he play? 40 games?
41?
Yeah.
41 games. Yeah. That's there's no way to get any kind of rhythm or chemistry. And they still took that Raptors team to 6 games. And I remember when we were previewing the first round series, I remember just saying how I just didn't believe in that Raptors team. And I thought the Wizards actually could have upset them. If John Wall had played, let's say 60 games, right? And he still misses 20 games and they come into that first round with a little bit more playing time together, I think that Wizards team probably beats that Raptors team. That Raptors team is just so fluky when it comes to the playoffs. And as you mentioned, Nick, they got steamrolled, those first 2 games. But when they went back to Washington, the Wizards looked like the far and above better team. Obviously, the game was close, but it just, I don't know. So between the Wall injury and then just the chemistry is probably the only disappointment for me.
Yeah, I think obviously you lose a
And
top 10 point guard in John Wall. That always sucks, and the chemistry was bad. And like Kory said, Marcin Gortat was pretty trash, and I think that hurt them in terms of not having a roller to the rim. And they really had no good center. Jan Mahimni, Marcin Gortat, and Jason Smith. Those guys aren't really going to move the needle for you. So I think that was a pretty ugly situation there. And hopefully it could improve this year with Dwight, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But moving on, the ranking by the OTG staff, number 16 for the Wizards. Is this fair, too high, too low? What do you think?
My initial reaction to this was that it is way too low. And then I remembered that we are the Wizards and that it's probably warranted. I was having a look at those rankings yesterday. I think it really just depends on what year you catch us.
Yeah.
We could be in that top 10.
Yeah.
But realistically, given, we've had so many down seasons to, one
49 win season.
Yeah, one up season.
Yeah.
There's nothing really showing that we can do that. But I'm excited. Jack.
Yes, mate.
I'm excited, boys, about Dwight. He's
We'll-
going to have a resurgence. He's going to transform his game.
Save it, mate. We're not for the free agent editions just yet. The trade.
But I am excited. So that's why I think this is a little bit too low.
I think it's fair right now. If you're talking about like right in the middle of the pack, I think the Wizards are right there, being in the Eastern Conference as well. There's a lot of depth in that Western Conference. I know Nick and I had an argument that we said we would postpone until like a later podcast for JBT about teams like the Denver Nuggets, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Pelicans, and where are the Wizards in that sort of glut of teams. But I think that this is quite fair. Obviously, like Nick said, I think they have a high enough ceiling in terms of where they can reach, a little bit high. They can maybe crack that top 10, but I think for right now, this is fair. And anywhere in that middle tier from 15 to maybe not as low as at 17, but around that range is very fair.
I think it's fair to start, but I'm right there with you, Nick. When we get to the additions, I'm actually really excited for what this team could look like next year. But I think it's fair to start, and I mean, even where they are in the ratings right now, it's not like there's a lot of Eastern Conference teams above them. It's really just the fact that the Western Conference is so good that all the Eastern Conference teams are really in like the bottom half of these power rankings.
Very true. I agree with you guys, though. I think the Wizards could definitely boost themselves up, but I also could see, the locker room kind of exploding and maybe dropping a spot or two. So I think to start the season, this is very fair given their talent, but obviously the chemistry issues could bring them down. But,
guys, is there a team? Sorry, Nick. Is there a team? I'm just thinking because we always talk about floor and ceiling when it comes to these ratings. Is there a team in the NBA right now that has a greater discrepancy in terms of their ceiling can be quite high, but their floor could also be astronomically low? Like, is there like a greater team with a wider
playoffs
range
in the East?
Yeah, is there a team with a wider range than the Wizards in the NBA right now?
Blazers.
Maybe the Blazers.
It's tough to say. I would say in the East, definitely the Wizards. The Wizards are definitely the team with the highest ceiling and the lowest floor. I mean, I guess if maybe you want to look west, you can make the argument for the Lakers.
I was going to say the Lakers,
yeah. LeBron could technically get them to the finals, or they technically could maybe slip into the playoffs or just miss it. It depends on who you're asking, but I think that's probably one of the top three teams in terms of what the biggest differential is. That's what I have on my notes, too. It's just like, what are we going to get with the Wizards? I really don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sure it makes Nick sleep better at night. But moving on to additions, draft picks, Troy Brown Jr., 15th overall. Some thought it was maybe a reach, nice playmaking player, has some good size. Jumper is a little bit unorthodox. But what were your thoughts on Troy Brown?
Being the avid college ball fan that I am, sarcasm fully intended, I go into the draft every year fairly blind. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I look at these guys with open eyes, embrace them for what they can and cannot do, and read a lot of articles and get other people to form my opinion for me. But yeah, I mean, it's a decent pick. Like you said, I think it was regarded as a bit of a stretch, but I'm willing to reserve my judgment until he can maybe solidify a constant bench spot. Coming as a shooting wing.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is like what mold does he fit right now, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing. We were chatting a bit about this off wax, and we brought the comparison of Evan Turner. I even think Karis LeVert of sorts, but obviously they're different games, but they're athletic guys that can shoot a little bit, that can pass a little bit, that are very athletic. I think he has a ways to go in terms of his jump shot, but I think it's going to be interesting to see if he can crack the rotation. I'm not sure how confident Scott Brooks is going to be to play. If he couldn't play Thomas Satoransky last season,
that's right.
Barely 80 minutes. How much time is going to give to a guy like Troy Brown, who I think has some real potential, and I think can be a nice complementary piece in this Wizards system. They've got guys like Kelly Oubre, Otto Porter, these sort of like nice rangy wings that can do a little bit of everything. So I like the pick, despite the fact that many of people had him even early in the second round, let alone mid first round. But the Wiz is going to whiz.
Yeah, I mean, Troy Brown, right? I'm with you, Nick. I don't watch a ton of college. Like literally, I make a bracket for March Madness, and that's like as much of college basketball as I pay attention to. It's pretty similar to like my NFL coverage now. Like, I make a fantasy football team and I watch players, and all of a sudden, like I realize some teams like really good or really bad. But I mean, Troy Brown's interesting. I mean, he's 6'7", he's 19. He's a young kid. I personally wouldn't have selected Troy Brown at this pick. I was kind of shocked they did. I mean, I'm skeptical. I don't necessarily understand the pick, but I mean, we're all in on him, I guess, right?
Yeah, Nick's got some stats for me. The stats man's back.
I've got some stats. Well, in summer league, he was averaging 18.4 points a game off 43% field goals with almost 7 rebounds as well. So, I mean,
second top scorer to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which is
exactly
decent. Yeah. So, I mean, it's if you're looking for signs, and like the summer league is generally where you see that little spark.
It's the only real thing that we've got.
So yeah, I mean, I look at college ball, and I pay more attention, obviously, being we're all NBA heads. We're not Dylan Jackson. We're not like draft experts, and we'll leave that to him, and he's doing that absolutely awesomely. But we pay attention to what they can do at an NBA level. There are still NBA caliber guys they're playing against at the summer league. At the college level, not so much. So I think that was a nice sign, that being the second top scorer, second in rebounds, fourth in assists. It's not too bad.
Yeah, it seems like the vibe that you're getting from him is he's going to be a nice player, maybe not a starter, but a really nice guy to bring off the bench and just have some playmaking with some good size. And I think he's another guy that benefits of being positionless basketball. Maybe a couple years ago it'd be a little bit harder to find a role for him, but now he should be in a good spot. Looking at some more additions, though, trade-wise, they picked up Austin Rivers, obviously a combo guard, gives him some nice bench depth. And he's really honestly developed into a solid player in LA. A lot of people hate on him, but I think he's okay, and it's not a bad pickup. What are your thoughts on him?
I think a lot of the hate stems from the father-son situation, which
no
really
way.
didn't help. Like all of it. Yeah. I mean, you can't. Not when you. But I guess he has now. But he was good. But like all that hate was unwarranted. Like people were saying, like, why is he getting a game? Well, because his dad's the coach, but.
He's a good basketballer.
Yeah, he was, especially last season. I feel like he elevated a little bit. So he can definitely be useful off the bench for us.
Yeah, I think in maybe even some 3-guard lineups, I'd like to see Scott Brooks experiment with that a little bit. I think, obviously he doesn't have the size to sort of be like, a small forward, but Bill has that a little bit more size. And I think, if you're going all out offense, I think he could be quite nice there. I think, he can play a complementary piece alongside either of those guys if one of them is on the bench or if both of them are on the bench. So I think that, he's a nice piece. I think in terms of getting it as a return for Marcin Gortat, isn't horrible. I think that, who knows what we could see from Austin Rivers next year. He could be in the 6 man of the year conversation, or he could be, another part of what is already a cancerous sort of locker room. But I don't mind it. And I think I've read recently as well that he's buying into being sort of like this sort of defensive stopper of sorts. Now, Austin Rivers has never been that at all, but he's sort of buying into the role. Maybe he's had a word with Scott Brooks and the front office and said, sort of going, okay, well, we've got the offense. We want, some real gritty defense to sort of help elevate us there. So who knows what we could see from him next season, but he has proven himself to be an NBA caliber player. And I think that's enough has been said of that. And, we need to sort of, give him a bit of a break in that sort of sense.
All right. So Shelvin Mack, Sean Livingston, let this continue. Trey Burke, Eric Maynor, Raymond Sessions, Tim Frazier, Andre Miller.
Ty Lawson.
Who am I missing?
Ty Lawson.
Ty Lawson.
Ty Lawson. Yep. So these are just some of the failed experiments for backup point guard the Wizards have had in the recent years. Oh, Brandon Jennings. Can't forget Brandon Jennings.
Oh, Brandon Jennings.
They keep looking for a backup point guard to kind of help when John Wall, if he gets hurt, or for a change of pace. And they just haven't had a backup point guard. So now, I mean, even though it depends on what you see. Austin Rivers, he's more of like a 2 guard, but he is. I mean, positionless basketball, he's a 1 or a 2. Yeah. So Austin Rivers is like the next guy up. You give another guy a chance and possibly be the backup point guard for John Wall. And on paper, I was really high on Tim Frazier last year, so I feel really stupid. But Austin Rivers could be that guy.
Yeah, I'm more disappointed at the fact that I think if Austin Rivers takes minutes from Thomas Satoransky, who was a really effective piece in terms of his shooting, in terms of his passing, in terms of just his malleability and his ability to
He's
fit.
a smart basketball.
And Scott Brooks is just going to see, Austin Rivers, he's played blah, blah, blah. He's played in winning sort of systems. And he's a veteran of sorts in comparison to Sato. I hate coaches that are like that. And if I see Austin Rivers being played like that in the clutch more than Thomas Satoransky, I'm sure Nick is going to be the only one that's going to be, pulling his hair out.
It's a very Tom Thibodeau sort of mentality.
Yeah, Scott Brooks has definitely caught a lot of hate for the lineups he chose last year, and I agree. I think Austin Rivers can provide them with something, but if he's taking minutes from Satoransky, that's not a good thing. But looking at free agent signings, Jeff Green, 1 year, $2.5 million, a solid veteran off the bench, some nice versatility. Thoughts on bringing over Jeff Green?
I like it. I mean, some more depth on that wing, which I think can never be undersold. Some veteran presence, like you mentioned. Championship? Did he win that championship with?
No,
not
yet. Last season.
But playing with LeBron, I mean,
yeah. Well, for
playoffs experience, I guess we'll call it. Can be a very valuable piece to a relatively young team.
Yeah, I think that in terms of being a replacement for Mike Scott, who we'll get to, I don't think he's probably going to have the productivity and the efficiency that a Scott will have. Jeff Green has never been the most efficient player, but, last season, shot a career best 54% on 2-point attempts and, almost just a little over 31%, which from 3, which is, not great, but, 86% from the line as well. Almost 11 points, 3 rebounds, 31 years old. I think that, he revitalize his season of sorts, and I think that a bench piece for the minimum, there's not many better out there than a guy like a Jeff Green.
I was a big fan of this signing. Jeff Green, even though he's just sporadic, and when you watch Jeff Green play, you just think he's supposed to be better than he is. Like, I remember when he was at the Celtics and then OKC, I was like, oh, this guy could be like a perfect complementary player on these teams. They just never really developed. Of course, he had the heart issue and everything. But I'm a big fan of Jeff Green. So I think, especially with we saw how he looks, in the corner of, on catch and shoot passes from LeBron James. He's going to get a lot of similar looks with John Wall, Bradley Beal, driving kickouts. So I like the fit of Jeff Green. You just have to understand that it is going to be up and down. There will be games like the Game 6 and Game 7 against the Boston Celtics, and then he'll look like he did in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not a bad signing for them, especially considering what their bench looks like. So I think it was a nice move. Moving on to Dwight Howard, who we already mentioned plenty today. 2 years, $11 million, second-year player option. Obviously, fills a need at center, can still have a big impact on the game. But the main concern is the locker room, the attitude, and kind of buying into a team in that role. What are your thoughts on Dwight Howard in Washington?
I mean, can he be much worse than Gortat? No. So any improvement there is exciting. He seems, just from comments on the offseason, he seems bored in, wanting to transform his game to a more modern style, whether he reaches the Anthony Davis caliber that he's shooting for.
Come on, man.
Hey, I have to have unwavering faith. I don't have a choice.
Good luck with that, bro.
But yeah, 16 points a game last season, better than the Gortat 10. If we're just going off raw stats, it's a clear improvement. You're getting rid of a toxic or seemingly toxic player for something that
isn't equally toxic.
Isn't at the moment, but time will tell. Time will tell. But yeah, I'm super excited to see those big, broad shoulders in a Wizards jersey.
I learned magic for 8 years, traveled to La La Land, learned how to work with rockets. I went and learned to fly with some hawks, got stung by the hornets. Just a joke. But through all that, it's taught me how to be a wizard. I mean, come on, man. Dwight Howard, he's the corniest dude.
That is some philosophical stuff right there.
What kind of philosophy you buying into, mate? You're buying into some Twitter philosophy right there. It's Dwight Howard at his finest. And I mean, it's odd. I've always been a big sort of Dwight Howard guy. I remember saying on previous outlets like last season as well that I thought like he can be a decent presence. He's a rebounding monster, and he always has been. He's 32 years old, and his body isn't showing any real signs of wavering. He's been quite durable. For me, I think the main sort of difference that you're looking at in terms of Gortat is Gortat was a very willing screener and a very good screener at that, and that sort of allowed him and John Wall to have as much an on-court chemistry as much as there was none off the court. Whereas I think Dwight Howard, if he does buy in and like Nick's saying and becomes this Anthony Davis, rim runner, and he sets some screens, the verticality that he can provide, he's still got that leap. He's still, a ferocious dunker. He's still a beast down there. He's a 4-time defensive player of the year. Obviously, he's past that. He's still, a very good blocker, and it will be an upgrade on defense over Gortat. It's just whether he's going to be stat hunting in terms of looking for that sort of second big contract to come after this one. It's going to be interesting to see. He's saying all the right things, but the players always say all the right things going into the offseason. So I'm excited because I think he can provide them with a higher ceiling. But like we said earlier, he can also provide them with an astronomically lower floor.
The last prediction I made on a big man was Joel Embiid, a rookie of the year, which didn't happen.
But he should have.
Yeah,
fair enough.
So I'm 100% for big man predictions.
1 from 1, mate. 1 from 1. Well done.
The Daily Double. Superman, D12. Now D21, right? His number's 21 now.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been an advocate for Dwight Howard. I think last year on the outlet, we had an episode where I said, is Dwight Howard a top 5 center in the league?
Wowza.
And I definitely said
you
no.
remember that podcast?
I might have, but I definitely said no because I'm the opposite of all of you guys. So.
Yeah. I think it might have been actually when he got traded to the Hornets that we actually had that discussion. I mean, I think this is perfect for the Wizards. I mean, he is everything Gortat is not. I mean, he can rebound to a high clip. He's still really good around the basket. He can still block. He's not the same defensive player of the year that he once was, but he is still a rim protector. He is still a big body. I mean, last year with the Hornets, he had some really nice moments. I mean, there was one play where I saw him go coast to coast. It's like, what the hell is going on? Obviously, against the Brooklyn Nets, he had that 30 for 30 game. He's still a really capable player, 16 and 12 last year. And I just think he'll be even better this year, playing with a shooter like Bradley Beal, having a guy like John Wall to facilitate and throw him oops. Obviously, Dwight Howard is a known guy who doesn't like playing the pick and roll. But if he just accepts the fact that he could be really good in the pick and roll with John Wall, this team could be really good offensively. Yeah. And I think Dwight Howard does still have some years left in him. But again, it's really not the on the court with Dwight Howard I'm worried about. It's more so, is this guy going to be a dickhead in the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, you guys said some of the concerns. He loves to sit in the post and try to get the ball down there and score. He doesn't necessarily love to set picks, and obviously in the NBA, that's what bigs are doing a lot. You need to be a monster on the boards, and defensively, yeah, he can still protect the paint, but as soon as you pull him out to the perimeter, he's definitely in trouble. So I think, there's definitely some positives if he buys into the role, which is the biggest concern. Obviously it all looks good on paper, and, Dwight's going to be the center. He's going to run pick and roll with John Wall, but is he actually going to do that? Is he going to do the small things? I think now in the modern NBA, a lot of bigs, you're looking for them to do dirty work. And I don't know if Dwight's going to buy into that. If he does, it'll be a great signing. If he doesn't, it could really hurt the Wizards. But at least for them, it's not a long-term deal, 2 years. I'm sure they could probably get out of it because the second year is a player option. But still, I'm not as high as you guys. I think it could really work out, but I also could think it really bad.
I also think that when we get to Thomas Bryant, I think Thomas Bryant can be a capable backup center as well. But we'll have a chat about him as well.
Well, that's actually our next topic. Thomas Bryant, young, big, obviously some potential there. Kind of a flyer on a young guy, not having a ton of young talent on the roster. And I know the Wizards going the offseason wanted to get some young bigs, so there is some potential there. What are your thoughts on Thomas Bryant?
It's more my concern with Thomas Bryant is game time. For him, having to compete spots with Dwight and Jan, given that Scott Brooks is not one to play a lot of youth. He likes, I think Jan Mahimi and Dwight will steal a lot of game time from Bryant. But it's tough to say until you actually start seeing seeing these lineups in the season. But I think that's my concern with him.
I like the flyer in terms of being, a guy who's only 21 years old, a high prospect in terms of, his skill set, very athletic, can shoot the three, can do that little gritty stuff that I think, Dwight will have some problems doing. But, those two, Dwight's obviously shown that he's been quite a durable player, but Yard Mahimi has barely played 60 games in his Wizards career. So I think that, in that sense, I think he could be a capable sort of backup to the backup. You need to have that depth, and I think Thomas Bryant is a perfect sort of third big on your roster. And he might not be like sort of veteran guy, but it's worth taking a flyer on a guy like a Thomas Bryant because he could show you some flashy moments, and I think that he's going to be willing to do all that it takes to sort of can extend his NBA career, and whatever that means. Coming from Scott Brooks.
Well, that's right. I mean that. You touched on being so young. He's not going to have the same arrogance as Dwight Howard's going to have. He's going to be, like you said, trying to extend that contract. So he's going to be completely freeform with however Brooks wants to play him.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I don't think I've ever seen Thomas Bryant play. I'm just gonna be real, And I like when you get brought up Thomas Bryant, I was like, have I seen him play? And I went to Basketball Reference, which is probably the greatest thing ever invented. Seeing he playing just 15 games last year, now I know for sure that I definitely did not see any Thomas Bryant really. But who knows? He's young. I said he's 20. Maybe he can develop into a solid backup center, but I don't see this guy getting a lot of run time because they still have Mahimi on the books, and Mahimi's actually not bad. I like Mahimi.
I like him as well. Yeah,
it's just
when he plays.
Yeah, it's just
he's just always hurt. Yeah.
He was a lot better when he was on the Pacers. When I watched him with the Wizards,
right.
he hasn't been as good. I think a lot of it's injury and just like getting out of rhythm, but he fouls a ton. I remember seeing him come into a game and get like 3 fouls in a couple minutes. I was like, oh, God.
And he always looks so angry and confused when he gets a foul. Like, what?
You can't hit them on the head?
There's no blood. It's not a foul. No.
Straightforward words with Yard Mahimi, definitely.
In France.
Moving on to departures, Tim Frazier, Mike Scott, Chris McCullough, Ramon Sessions, Ty Lawson. Any of these guys you wish they re-signed? Or are they going to lose anything not re-signing them?
I was a big fan of, obviously Mike Scott, no doubt. Of the two bench pieces that we brought in last season in Jody Meeks and Mike Scott was easily the front runner if you're comparing the two. But you mentioned Ramon Sessions. I think that was a few seasons out. I don't think it was this season.
I think it's yeah.
I mean, I could talk about Ramon Sessions. I was a big fan of Ramon Sessions. I think I might have been the only one.
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, he was on he played some games. He got hurt, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mike Scott will definitely be sorely missed. His 3-and-D presence, or his 3, was just incredible, and he hit some clutch buckets for us.
Yeah, and he reached double figures in 31 of 76 games. Only Oubre had more than that off the bench. A really sort of striking stat, tied for 11th in the NBA in effective field goal percentage, which is pretty insane for a guy who isn't a knockdown three-point shooter, but he was so efficient in the mid-range. If I was a Wizards fan, sitting next to one, if I was a Wizards fan, I'd probably prefer to have Scott over Green. But in terms of like what you're getting out of the productivity, in terms of how much you want them to contribute to winning basketball, I think it's negligible what you're sort of losing from a Scott to a Green. But he'll still be missed, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you miss, DUI, Ty Lawson.
You're sick.
That's bad. That wasn't a good one.
Guys, we're finishing the show without him.
Losing composure. All right, back to the show.
Kory's actually drunk right now. By the way.
Yeah, that's the issue, right? I mean, you're not going to miss any of these guys. I mean, they all turned out to be relatively bust to a degree. I mean, they just never lived up to their roles. Tim Frazier, I mean, that guy played really well for the Pelicans. He had a couple triple doubles last year or the year before, and then he just fell off completely. Jody Meeks, he was just, I mean, I don't know what happened to him. He could hit threes. Now he can't hit threes. Much of what I said about like Mike Scott, I think every time I saw Mike Scott take a jump shot last year, it went in. I swear to God, he did not miss anything. He felt like he was automatic in the 18 and a half minutes he played per game. So he's probably the only guy you missed because he was just like you mentioned, Jack. He was a really steady, consistent offensive option for them off the bench.
Dude, Mike Scott was a monster in the playoffs. He hit 63% from three. He had like so many big games, and he was saving them off the bench because he was actually a big that could kind of stretch the floor and rebound a little bit. So I think losing Mike Scott, but like you guys said, I don't think they could afford to keep him. I don't think he got a ton of money, but the Wizards cap situation isn't very nice. So they kind of got the Jeff Green swap. But the rest of the guys, Chris McCall's the guy that I always felt like had potential, but he just seems to never be able to do it on NBA floor. And he's had a real problem putting on weight because he's super skinny. And all the guards, obviously, they brought in Austin Rivers. They have Satoransky. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know about McCullough from our Nets days, but I think he may have a future in China. But I'm doing like research on like player season reviews and stuff. And when I go to NBC Sports and the team review of Tim Frazier, and his best game is revealed as 4 points, 3 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks. 2 or 5 from the field. He did have 14 assists. So that was
okay. You started with the bad stats.
I did. I had to build the suspense. But yeah, I remember doing the Pelicans preview with you guys, and we were all really high on this. And sort of maybe they, like Kory was rattling off those names earlier, maybe they finally found their guy. But sadly not. Sadly not.
Well, hopefully Tim Frazier can get his game back up to normal levels. But starters, prediction portion of the show. Who's starting on opening night for the Wizards?
Nick, but before we forgot, I think the second round pick, Yusuf Sanon, and he is going to be a draft and stash guy for those who don't know much about him. I think he's a similar sort of prospect. What I think they're going to be getting out of like Satoransky. They sent Satoransky away to the Euro leagues and got him back, and he was NBA ready. I think that's what they're going to be doing with a guy like Sanon.
So they'll get him NBA ready, and then not play. Is that what they're going to do?
Possibly, but he is super duper young. From Slovenia as well, who is churning out some absolutely insane NBA prospects, and he's only 18 years old as well. So I think that in terms of a second round flyer for Wizards fans, I think certainly keep an eye on him in the next 2-3 years. I think he could be NBA ready.
Nice little info from Jack. We only care about players that are going to be in the NBA. No,
True that.
Prediction wise, though, starters on opening night. Who do you got?
I think it's a MO. It's a MO of Scott Brooks to stick to a consistent lineup. So the only change is going to be the fact that we don't have Marcin Gortat anymore, and so Dwight Howard's going to play. So it'll be Wall, Beal, Keefe, Otto, and Dwight.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see some small ball lineups and see Oubre crack that starting rotation.
I would love to see Oubre crack that starting,
but we can save that for a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be that starting lineup. I'd be very, very surprised if otherwise.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I think that's got to be the starting lineup. I'd be shocked if he went small to start.
Yeah, spot on with you guys. But position battles, where could we see changes in the starting lineup, rotations? Where can we see anything kind of spice it up?
Well, I think if they do want to play small, Kelly Oubre has a chance to maybe get into a position battle there, playing at the 3, 4.
You can play Otto at the 4 and then play Keefe at the 5 if Dwight's like an absolute cancerous.
Well, if the big lineup doesn't work out, but most of the battles will be happening on the bench. Who's going to be that number 2 in that position? And I truly, truly hope that Satoransky gets the nod at the point with Rivers at the 2.
We should call this
rather than Rivers taking on the 1.
Yeah, we should call this a Thomas Satoransky pod. We've shown him some major.
I don't.
He deserves it.
Zach Lowe, big respect for the man, is absolutely in love with Thomas Satoransky, and that has just like fortified my stance on him. I'm like all in on Sato.
Yep. Nick was in on Sato before it was cool, Zach. If you're listening,
his first season was very
he definitely is listening.
Yeah, I mean, I would like. I would like to see some, lineup rotations where Scott Brooks messes it with a little bit, but I'd highly doubt it. If Howard is going to be a guy, then don't start Mahimi over him. Keep at the 5. Throw some small ball lineups at it. In the death, if you're going up against like guys like the small ball death lineup in Golden State. throw your own version out there. Test it out. It'll be interesting to see if he experiments a little bit in the preseason. That's what it's for at training camp as well. But I'd like to see, and like Nick was saying, the guard rotation, the sort of backcourt battle is going to be one to watch in terms of the backups with Rivers, Troy Brown possibly as well if he can get some minutes in that sort of area, and then obviously Satoransky and Rivers.
I think the only positional battle could be, maybe if whatever position, I don't know who would go to the 4 in a small ball, but it'd be, Kelly Oubre Jr. pushing for a starting spot and maybe either Marquise Morris going to the bench if they wanted to go small to start. But I agree with you guys. The bench battle will be probably more intriguing than any battle where the starting lineup to change.
Yeah, I think the biggest battle is internally in Scott Brooks' head and trying to put out new lineups and whatnot. But
that's deep.
From breakout starter for the Wizards.
Nicholas, who you got? Anyone?
Well, breakout starter. I mean, who hasn't broken out? The only one I think of is Dwight because he hasn't played for us yet. I mean, does he average his 16 points a game off that bench? I mean, if he does and he shows some athleticism, does that make him his breakout? But my instincts were telling me Otto, but I don't think he's going to have a better season than he did. What was it, 2 years ago when you offered him that, when Nets offered him that max, and we were forced to.
You're welcome.
It was actually Jack and I. It wasn't Sean Marks. We personally sent him that offer.
Yeah, we got him on the DMs.
But I mean, if he can have another one of his absolute knockout seasons, I mean, that would be it for me.
Yeah, I'm in on Porter. I think that his 3 points, 3-and-D specialism, whatever you want to call it. I think that he can be one of the best players in that sense. In terms of his PER last season, he was 4th for small forwards, only behind Paul George, Kevin Durant, and LeBron James. Obviously, those are the 3 best small forwards in the game right now.
Nice
but not bad at all. So I think he needs to be utilized more in this offense, and not just let John Wall play some hero ball. I think there was some what Marcin Gortat was saying that everybody eats when Wall was out in terms of how the flow of the offense looked a lot better with Satoransky starting at the point. But I think, Porter has the skills and the capabilities. Like, if you're comparing to, say, like a Robert Covington type, I think Porter has a more elevated ceiling in terms of offensively than a guy like Covington. And in terms of defensively, maybe Covington has him there. But I think he still hasn't reached, his full potential yet. He's still, youngish. He's only been in the season for 5 seasons, so he should still be yet to hit that ceiling, but he should be starting to sort of reach that peak. We should be seeing peak Porter, and maybe peak Porter should start trending for Wizards Twitter next season. Not bad, yeah. That was right off the top of my head.
Not bad. I mean, for a guy, he's hitting 14 points a game, and is that enough? Exactly. I mean, but I don't think he gets fed enough. Yeah. There are many a game where he will shoot sub 10, whether he is shooting low or maybe he doesn't get the opportunities. But there are more often times where you'll see Wall, again, like you're saying, do that hero ball, and you trust him to do that. But you want to get your other players in just from don't worry about the game, from a mentality standpoint. If you are open on the wing and your star player does not choose you as the best option, it can be
deflating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For me, the breakout star is going to be Bradley Beal. I think Bradley Beal is still only 24, and I think there's still a lot more that his offensive game can go to, especially if he becomes, as we saw last year, the offensive focal point. You add a Dwight Howard, you add a John Wall healthy, and Bradley Beal offensive load shrinks a little bit, but I think he becomes more efficient, which he's already an efficient shooter. I'm actually going to right now predict that Bradley Beal averages 25 points per game next year, which is going to be a 3-point jump. I just look forward to it. If he's healthy and he's on the floor and you have these added weapons around him, I just think it makes a guy like Bradley Beal that much better. The ability to, space the floor and everything else. He's going to be crucial next year to this team's success. And I'm actually expecting a breakout year from Bradley Beal and, his second All-Star appearance.
And I think he learned a lot last season, obviously taking on a bigger role, and now it's going to be a little bit easier. But I like Otto Porter as well. He also dealt with a lot of injuries last year, and I think some of it is the Wizards. I remember seeing games where he didn't even have like 10 shots. And like you're paying him so much money, you need to get him shots. I also think, I'll reference John Wall and the fact that he's not going to break out, but I think he's going to get back to form and be one of those top 5 point guards that everyone's talking about. Is he the best point guard in the East? And he's going to be back in that conversation. But breakout. Oh, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I remember Kory and I arguing about that, debating that a little bit in terms of on the Full Access Hoops player power rankings one. And John Wall was probably one of the consensus guys who was just, what can we see from him? Can he get back there? And he's certainly in one of the most stacked positions in the NBA, but he has the elite talent. He's proven that. And let's hope he can be healthy, because I'm always about, guys staying healthy and seeing the NBA at its best, seeing the stars at its best. And, hopefully we see a revitalized Wall going into next season.
And he's definitely heard all the talk, so he probably has a mean chip on his shoulders, been putting in extra work. And I think Kory mentioned earlier, if he can get that jump shot going, that's going to be huge and be more efficient having the guys around him. But breakout bench player for next year.
For me, it's got to be Kelly. I think that might be maybe a basic decision, but he's just been consistently getting better and better every season. His defense is phenomenal. I think a lot of people focus on his offense because his ability to hit the three. He's quite an efficient player, and he's strong, he's athletic, but his defense is tremendous. If he can improve that offensive standing, he can be one of our best two-way players.
Yeah, I think he's also been working with the man himself, the famed trainer Drew Hanlon, on dribbling and creating his own shot, which I think is vital when it comes to being an offensive weapon in any sort of system. Defensively, he can still improve. 3-point shooter, he can still improve as a one-on-one defender. But I think Wizards fans should be excited about having a still relatively young nucleus with Wall, Beal, Oubre, and Porter. Those 4 guys going forward, they're still yet to sort of reach it as a collective. And I think that's one thing that should have Wizards fans somewhat optimistic. And I think Oubre is still growing, he's still very young. And I think we should see some big things from him next season.
Man. So, and I feel stupid for my pick now. No, I'm just kidding. Austin Rivers for me is the breakout bench player. I like the fact this team is, at least on paper, looks like they're going to have a nice backup guard for John Wall. I know you guys both love Sato. I'm very high on Sato too. I just like what Austin Rivers can give them. This is a guy who's obviously not scared to shoot the basketball. And I think the issue with their bench unit has been they just don't have a guy who can really go out there and just get a bucket. I don't even know who the last bench guy is that they had who can just go out and get a bucket on his own.
Ramon
Sessions. Like can be who?
Ramon Sessions.
He's not even there anymore.
Like he wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm full. So for me, I think it's got to be Austin Rivers. I do think that he's better as a 2-guard off the bench, but I think he can be, just an offensive threat. And I like the thought of him, coming off the bench for 25, 26 minutes, probably 28 minutes realistically. I don't know how Scott Brooks is going to divvy up the minutes. And then just going out there with the sole intent to do a little bit of playmaking and then just score.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jack and Nick on this. I'm going to go with Kelly Oubre Jr. I think contract year, it's a big year for him. He's looking to get paid. I think he improved as a 3-point shooter last year, and they need him to make that jump. And obviously having somebody with that type of defense and versatility where he can kind of play the 3 of the 4, he could probably defend 2 through 4 if he gets a little bit more weight on. I like Oubre to break out, and he could have a big impact for them moving forward. But best case scenario for the Wizards next season.
This is. I was anticipating this question because we've been talking.
Well, it's in the rundown, Nicholas. So of course you're anticipating.
No, I've been. I'm good with words. I am excited because we've been talking about this throughout the whole podcast of the swing of the Wizards, the ebb and flow of and how good and bad this team can be. So
Jekyll and Hyde, mate.
I'm putting it. Our best case scenario could be.
Don't say the first seed.
Second in the East.
Second.
Wow.
Yikes. Well,
Jack, did he smoke a joint before this?
I don't know. Walking in the
guys, I'm going through a tunnel.
I'm only thinking maybe second is a bit high because of the Sixers.
Why didn't we get Nick Sarai for the hot take marathon?
But that's all. Cleveland are out. I think Pacers got lucky.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Take here.
Let's just go.
Jack,
Kory,
you and I are going to take a couple minutes off. You guys.
Just going to drink.
But we're talking best case scenario, and these things, everything needs to go right for these things to happen. We reach our ceiling and I think we can compete with your Philadelphia 76ers.
Interesting. I thought I was doing a massive hot take by putting him as the third seed, and I got barely any love from that on Twitter.
We've been talking about what the ceiling of these guys is tremendous, and you don't think it could be on par with the Sixers?
No, because the Sixers have an even higher ceiling than the Wizards right now.
Yeah, but then okay, if both teams fire at the same season, fair enough.
Yeah,
I'd agree.
But
with you.
and the Wizards' floor is a lot greater. We've seen the Sixers without
This
Joel
is
Embiid.
best case scenario. Jack.
Yeah, okay, best case.
Let me
scenario.
live in my head for a moment.
All right, you live in that fantasy magic Wizards land.
2K just dropped. You can make it happen. No,
Right, it'll be shocked when you see my worst case scenario.
Yeah, well, 2K dropped. Maybe start reading Harry Potter. Maybe that's where the Wizards will start firing a little bit more. I think that they can be a 3 or a 4 seed, 50 wins or so. Last season the Sixers got the third seed with 52 wins. I think that's a little bit much for a team that's barely got 50 wins in their entire franchise history. They got 49 wins a couple of seasons ago. I think that that's around the range that where their ceiling is. So I think best case scenario a 3 seed, because I put it out there. I put it into the ethos in terms of with OTGbasketball.com. So I have to back up what I'm writing.
I mean, I agree with you, Jack. I mean, 50 wins seems right, and the second seed doesn't seem right to you. I think the Boston Celtics are going to eat a lot of wins in the East.
Yeah, but at the same time, the Raptors, could they get 55 wins? The Sixers, did they take a jump? It's going to be interesting to do the Pacers continue their form. 48 win. Yeah, the Bucks, can they take a massive jump? If you're talking about teams that can take another jump, I think that their ceiling is huge. But yeah, third seed I think isn't out of the realms of possibility, but I wouldn't put my money on it.
What do you got, Kory, after he threw Major State at the Pacers?
Just came at me. Through the microphone. Holy snap. I think, all right. So best case scenario, I think a 2 seed actually isn't crazy. For me, a best case scenario would be a 3 seed, 50, 52 wins, somewhere in that range. That's everybody being healthy, and that's, Dwight Howard fitting in offensively, John Wall being healthy, Bradley Beal 25 per game, Porter being nice, the bench actually being an efficient bench unit between Oubre Jr. and Austin Rivers. So I think a 2 seed, it would be like, that's everything going their way. But I think a 3 seed is best case scenario.
Yeah, I think the best case scenario is a 3 seed as well. I think, Bradley Beal and John Wall finally gel together, and you see a nice fit there. Dwight fits in, Porter and Oubre take another jump, and like Kory mentioned, the bench is solid. But worst case scenario.
Jeez, now the NBA have the biggest swing. I mean, you've got teams like the Pistons and even the Hornets to an extent that can overtake us. If we decide to not show up next season.
I can't wait till the Nets have more wins than the Wizards, because I've gotten so much crap from
for many years.
Yeah,
many a year.
It's going to happen soon, mate. It could happen next year. Just wait, we'll see.
But there's a very real possibility that we finish 9th or 10th as a worst case scenario. I can't see it unless we get 3 major injuries to our starting positions. I can't see it dropping below 10th.
Yeah, I mean, I've got them anything under 40 wins, and missing the playoffs would be catastrophic for the Wizards. We've seen them, without one of their stars, still be a very capable team in the East. And I think the fact that the East is, unless the Hornets and Pistons can get it all together, unless the East can, unless those teams, take a massive jump, I think the Wizards are still markedly better than them in terms of their roster, in terms of their talent. But I think as well, for me, if Wall cannot get back to full health, in any sense of the word, because his full supermax contract hasn't even kicked in yet, and it's not even kicking in next season. That $39 million for that first year of the supermax kicks in 2019, 2020.
So we've secured him for the next 7 years.
But yeah, he's on 19. He's still on the last year of that I think $90 million deal or something around that mark. So $19 million next year. If he can't get it back, that would be the worst contract in the NBA. We've talked about Mozgov and Biyombo. Everyone knows those ones. But if Wall can't get back, you're paying a guy $40 million freaking dollars. Who knows? Maybe the Phoenix Suns make a trade for him or something.
We'll give him to you guys.
Yeah, maybe he goes to the Magic and does some other wizardry over there.
Magic, Wizards, what? No.
Yeah.
Worst case for you, Kory.
Yeah, my worst case scenario is probably them being a bottom of the East team. A 6 seed or a 7 seed. There's chemistry issues, there's injuries. and this team gets, ousted in the first round in a 6 or 7 game series. I still think even if this team is like a 6 or a 7 seed, no matter who they play, they're probably going to take them into a deep playoff first round series.
Yeah.
I just think this team does have that kind of talent that as long as they're healthy. I mean, if they don't have one of their star guys for a playoff series, that's different. But if this team is healthy in the first round, they're still going to win at least 2 games, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to go with like 40, 42 wins, probably an 8 seed, worst case scenario. Maybe they just miss out, and obviously injuries happen, and then Dwight is just terrible, and that just whole situation doesn't work out. Maybe I'm hoping that happens, but actual prediction.
Sorry, Nick.
I am very surprised that your worst case scenario still put us in the playoffs. I have a lot of faith now. But my actual prediction will probably be around the 45, just a smidge over 500.
Yeah.
I think we'll finish 7th, 6th.
Yeah.
As an actual prediction. So that's I'm tempering expectations there because I'm leaning closer to the worst case scenario in 10th than the best case scenario in 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bucks, the Wizards, and the Pacers are in this sort of fight for that sort of 3 and 4 seed. From like 4 to 6, 3 to 6, they're going to be in a real race there. So I think that they'll finish around the middle of there. I think they'll finish about 5th, maybe 46 wins. I think that 43 wins last season. I think if they're healthy, John Wall automatically gives you an extra 3 wins. I think if all the guys improve like we've been saying, and I think Dwight Howard is anything of an upgrade over Marcin Gortat, then I think they have to get a couple more wins. It's just about it's going to be fascinating to see. There's so many storylines around this Wizards team, but the teams around them as well. The Bucks and the Pacers. Can the Bucks take the massive leap? They're one of the best players in the Eastern Conference. Can the Pacers continue with Nate Millen under his system to take leaps and bounds and to convict Oladipo lead them? Can Turner take a jump? Those are questions that will affect, I think, this Washington Wizards team.
Yeah, I'm screwed when it comes to this Eastern Conference standings because I think the Pacers, Bucks, and Wizards are all fighting for these, the 4 through 6 range. I think the actual prediction I got for the Wizards is I think they're going to be the 5 seed. I think they're going to be right in the middle of the East. I don't think they're good enough to have home court personally. I think they're going to. I'm really high on the Bucks this year. I think you can't underestimate the Raptors or the Sixers. So I think 5 is about right. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing what this big 3 in Washington looks like. So I'm going to say they probably get right around 47, 48 wins on the year.
Yeah, I'm around the same range as you guys. I think anywhere between 45 and 47 wins, that 4 to 6 range. John Wall's back. He gets his stuff going. Dwight has some good moments. He also has some bad ones. And maybe they make another move at the deadline and trade another first-round pick, which it feels like they do a lot. But now the most important question of the show, what emoji represents the Wizards for you?
So I'm going to be picking the avocado emoji. Now, bear with me because I've got an explanation for this. All right. So we are an interesting fruit thing.
Acquired.
We've got an acquired taste.
There we go.
All right. Some people will love us. Some people like that creamy, smooth, disgusting taste, and other people find it absolutely horrendous. I fall into the case of I hate avocados, but I don't hate the Wizards, so that's a bit of a moot point. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a love-hate relationship with a lot of people. We've got some aspects that we like and some aspects that we'll actually absolutely love. And
yeah, just add a bit of lemon and salt, and the Washington Wizards are going to be fine this season. I've got the zipper mouth face. The Wizards just really need to shut the hell up and let their basketball do the talking.
Well, avocados can't talk, mate.
They should I guess we'll. I'm tripping on that avocado one. That's pretty good. I haven't had breakfast yet. I might have some avo on toast. Nick, you got any avos here? But yeah, I'm going to zipper mouth face because the Wizards just need to stop talking and start putting it all out on the court.
My emoji face is the smile face. I'm literally smiling because I actually think the Washington Wizards are going to be really good. I think this team is going to be fun between, John Wall, Beal, Dwight Howard. I think this actually is a big 4 almost. I mean, if Otto Porter Jr. plays up to what he's been doing the last couple of years, I mean, this is a team that's got a lot of talent in that starting lineup. So I'm smiling because I think the Wizards may actually, believe it or not, guys, hold on, they might actually back up their words this year.
Wow.
Whoa!
We need that, that emoji
Crazy.
where the guy is just like fully shook.
Yeah.
I need to stop referencing GIFs on a podcast. I do it too often.
For me, I'm gonna go with the two masks. Like the performing arts. The one happy face and the one sad face, because I think
Nice. That's good.
the Wizard season could go either way.
So
Nick could
wait,
be
they're
really
smiling
happy
on the
or
court
really
and frowning
upset.
off the court?
What?
Are they smiling on the court and they're frowning off the court? Is that what it is?
It could be both. It could be both, or it could be both in the wrong way. So,
Who knows?
but league pass rating 1 through 10.
Am I less of a fan if I give this one less than 10? No, I legitimately am going to give this one an 8 because personal,
Bias.
personal bias, but a little bit in there. But I do think that how they play the young pieces, and I'm really excited about Dwight. I think I've mentioned this on this show.
You have a couple
times. But yeah, I am excited to see how we gel together. I'm more just excited for basketball to be back, and they're going to be my team to watch.
Yeah, it's odd. I think that stylistically they could be a really fun team, but at the same time they could be horrible to watch. So, do you go just with a straight 5 because of that? I'm going to give them a 6.5. Partly because
6.7. Give us the 0.2.
Well, Nick went Kory went 1.7 with one of them. I'll give you 6.75 because it's the 3/4 range.
Thank you.
All right, it's closer to 7 for you, mate. Yeah, happy now.
So I'm actually giving out my highest league pass rating so far.
Oh.
I'm giving the Wizards a 7. I'm really interested to see how this team looks on the floor. So I think this team, as we mentioned, best case scenario, I think this is a 3 seed. And Nick's La La Dreamland, they're a 2 seed. So
What happened? You heard it here.
I think I think this team is going to be pretty fun to watch, especially if they're all healthy. And I actually have high hopes for this team. And I'm a big Bradley Beal fan already, so I have a lot of interest in this Wizards team.
Yeah, it's a highest for me as well. It's going to be a 7.5, like Kory said. There's just a lot of fun players to watch, a lot of young guys. I like John Wall. I want to see him get back to that level. But what TV show would you watch over the Wizards? Hypothetical, obviously, Nick, you're a Wizards fan, but we got a gun to your head. Who are you picking?
I mean, it would have to be something I've already seen, wouldn't it? Because there's not a lot that I wouldn't choose over the there's not a lot I would watch over watching the Wizards. I would probably watch, I don't know, like a
Game of Thrones.
Hold on, what was it? What would I watch over?
Yeah, so if you've got there's a new episode of your favorite show or the Wizards, what are you choosing?
Okay, so what would that show be? Is the question? Okay.
So if it's like I said for the Nets one, that it'd have to be like a reboot of The Office for me to have any chance of dragging me away from a Nets game.
All right. So if it was it would have to be my favorite show, new episode, Game of Thrones.
Right.
I have to see that the second it comes out.
Yeah.
So it's pretty high on my list.
What about a Wizards playoff game?
It's around the same time, isn't it, almost?
Yeah, I think so. In terms of, we're not going to say what our downloading habits are here. We don't want to get ourselves into trouble, but if there was a game 1 of a Wizards playoff series and episode 2 of the new season of Game of Thrones is out, what are you going for?
I mean, it all depends on where in the season it's situated. Right. Because if it was a season premiere or a last 2-3 episodes when shit gets hectic in Game of Thrones,
Dragons.
I would pick Game of Thrones. But you can always watch Game of Thrones later.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think sports you need to watch live.
Yeah, I can't watch replayed sports.
TV. Other than I don't really the TV.
We're trying to debunk the segment.
In theory, yeah, Jack is correct. I mean, watching TV replay doesn't really matter. I'm a binge watcher, so I prefer when it's old. But what do you got?
I'm a sucker for reality TV. Nick knows how much I am a bit of a.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, I'm a horrible human being. But for me, I'd watch them over shows like X on the Beach, Jersey Shore, and a bit of Love Island. But those are great shows.
Who wouldn't?
Love Island is an international phenomenon coming to the United States very soon, ladies and gentlemen. Tune in.
Do not watch it. Save yourself.
Don't worry about it, mate.
The only one I've heard of is Jersey Shore. So, Kory, what do you got?
I'm actually using a show I like now. Where I think we're at this point of the show, Nick, where I'm not gonna like have to figure out what shows I don't like to pick. So the first show I'm picking Breaking Bad. Obviously, I think
picked that for this.
What?
I almost picked that myself.
Yeah. I've only watched Breaking Bad through twice. I don't know if I'll watch it a third time through, but I probably will at some point. It's one of those shows. It's kind of hard to rewatch because it's one of those shows like it's really exciting the first time through, and the second time you kind of like pick up on the small stuff, and the third time you're like, what am I gonna miss? Like I've already seen it. But obviously, as you guys, I'm sure you guys have watched it too. It's a really good show. Mm-hmm. It's probably in my like top 20 of all time favorite shows. So I'll pick the Wizards over that.
Yeah, to make my life easier, Kory mentioned top 20. I made a top 20 list, which I will not release, but it's for my personal use to figure out shows for
Come on, the pop culture segment's coming, baby.
I was about to say.
Guys, that's low-key. This is confidential stuff. I don't know where you're leaking information.
Whoops.
I'm just kidding.
We have an OTG insider that'll be doing an op-ed for the Times very soon about
what Damian Lillard tweet out the press release for us.
I'll write it myself. No. For me, I'm going Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Like that's meaning the Wizards are a team that I actually like to like, but Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a funny show, which we talked about a little bit before the pod as well. But and they got the ties to the Nets, so that's always cool. But any last thoughts on the Wizards before we get out of here for our 2-hour podcast? No, I'm just kidding.
Pacers are better.
If the Pacers can fire, then yes, they definitely will be.
We need 2 tweets out on the OTG account. One, what was it again? Who are we talking about?
Bradley Beal and John Wall.
It's already out. Votes now.
It's already out. I can give you an update.
Wait, what's the update?
Please do. All right.
Beal or Wall? Right now, I think Wall will be winning. Actually,
Wall's got a lot of fandom behind
Wall has at 59%, Bradley Beal 41%. The comments are more interesting, though, because I've seen one from Dylan Jackson that said this is very easy, and it's Bradley Beal, and then other ones that said it's very easy, it's John Wall. So definitely check that out at OTG Basketball on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm checking that. My phone is dead, but I need it to be alive so I can jump into those comments because that sounds fire. And Nick hasn't been on Twitter in ages, but he might have to jump on for that.
Get back on Twitter.
Yeah. I've got no real final thoughts on the Wizards other than we can be the team to watch this year. But there is a question I want to pose to you guys after. But we'll get Jackson. You guys thoughts on the Wizards first?
Yeah, Nick and I'll do it because we've had this long.
Don't you spit some propaganda so that
I'll just say
get them onto your corner.
I'll just say what the question is. The long running debate between myself and Nick is who would you rather have as your number one guy to run a franchise with, Draymond Green or Klay Thompson?
And it's been heavily weighted to one side. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Kory, you go first.
No, you go first this time. It's your turn to go first on this podcast.
I think, if you're purely starting a team, finding a player like Klay Thompson is probably harder in terms of spacing and needing an elite three-point shooter. Like players like Klay, he's going to go down as one of the best shooters of all time. Obviously, Draymond could go down as one of the best defenders. But if you don't have any players that can score, and I think Draymond can make and play great defense, but Klay's a guy where you can get a ton of scoring out of him and just get that pop, and he's the focal point of your offense. And as much as I hate to say it, offense matters more than defense a lot. And I think, there's times when you can't guard Klay Thompson. No matter what you do, we've seen him drop like 30-plus points in a quarter. Draymond Green, great defender, but we've also seen him get bodied by LeBron James, bodied by Anthony Davis. Klay is that guy where you can't necessarily defend him, so I think I would go with Klay just because he's so rare. I mean, it's very close, though. I don't think it's like a clear cut. I would agree with either way.
I think more the question was who would get more wins if you were starting a team, who would get more wins
by themselves,
like Klay, like more, a greater win share, I guess, maybe like Klay or Draymond.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's obviously we'll let Kory have his thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's Klay Thompson still. I mean, let me just remind you guys. I'll throw my own shit at the Pacers. Let me remind
I didn't
you
want to do it actually
of this time that Klay Thompson scored 60 points. He held the ball for only 90 seconds in a game and scored 60 points. He took only 11 dribbles in a freaking game and scored 60 points. Yeah, that's the kind of offense you get from Klay Thompson.
Very true. Very valid points.
I think
got to be him.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I work for OTG Basketball. I've put the tweet. I did a poll, Nicholas. Like we've done like Vox Pops. It's over now.
You're never going to change my mind.
It's over.
You're
You
never
need
going to change my
You
mind.
need to change.
I think there is an argument though, for
Draymond's
Draymond. There is an
presence.
argument. There is an argument.
Clay is the most placid dude on that locker room. You think that team's going to be playing with the same vigor, with the same fight, with the same
Intensity.
quality that Draymond will give. Like I'm not denying that Clay is an immensely better player than Draymond Green at what he does. Draymond's like, if we're talking like raw stats and the amount of points he gives, and then that translates to wins. Yeah, okay, maybe. But does Clay make 5 other players around him better? I mean,
Yes.
it's a well-known fact that Draymond is a very huge presence in that team.
Yeah, but
His spacing makes them
Clay
better.
just-
But I also think if
Clay-
you put Draymond in a different situation, Draymond's too much of a dickhead for anybody to really like him.
exactly. I don't think that he like. I think Klay
I think he
Thompson-
commands a lot of respect from his teammates. It's just players on other teams don't like him. He's one of those players that you'd love to have, but hate to play against.
I
Yeah,
think
I
what
mean-
makes Draymond, sorry to cut you off, Jack. I think one reason Draymond's attitude and leadership is able to work is because they have Steph. And Steph is just this like great, amazing player that's just a leader that does things and makes everybody kind of work. And I think Steph is like one of the most underrated guys in that aspect. And that allows Draymond to be a dickhead. And I think at times his teammates probably hate him. I know Steve Kerr didn't like him at one point, and now they're good friends. But I think there's an argument for both sides, but it's still, I would go with Clay as well.
Could you not say the same thing about Clay, that he benefits from a system?
Yeah. Okay.
He definitely does.
This has been a long podcast. We can have this debate over.
We
some
could start
breakfast.
another podcast if you
I
want.
was just curious, and I knew in my heart of hearts you'd pick Clay, but I don't know. I'm staunch. I'm not wavering.
Fair enough, mate. All right, let's end it there with that, please. Please.
To
God.
give some love, Nick, one of the most heated debates I ever got with it on a podcast was about Draymond Green. So, and I was on the pro Draymond side. But
Hey, nice.
that wraps it up for the Wizards. Big thanks to Jack and Nick for hopping on. JBT Crossover. Check out their podcast on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Dash Radio, and YouTube. And as always, a pleasure, Kory. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Peace out, knuckleheads.